you for coming to Steve's meeting. I am Vicki Goldsmith, and I was Steve's high school English teacher 4 times. Not because he couldn't pass the class, but he just kept taking different courses. And I got to know him better than I knew a lot of students. The first year he was my student, he was 14. He was writing 20-page, page-turner Indiana Jones short stories. And not only writing them, but illustrating them. I knew, because I had taught for a long time, that this was not somebody who wanted to be a writer or planned to be a writer. It was someone who already was a writer. He has been one of those disciplined, daily writers as long as I have known him. Also, one of the funniest people I have ever known. I hope after the reading you'll find time to stroll behind this table, because since it was clear that he was going to be a serious writer, I started keeping a file on him when he was in the 9th grade. The only student I ever did that for, because there's only so much space. But I brought part of the file with me, and it's illustrations from one thing or another. The Valentine he made me that I get out every year and put up in my kitchen. So you'll want to see his artistic talent as well as hear his passage today. When I read Time's Laughingstocks, first of all, I was so charmed because it starts in Des Moines. It starts on that location, a 5-minute walk from my house. And I was just taken on a romp in this book, because it's funny and because it's poignant and familiar, but also because, as with everything Steve does in a playful way, there is this serious layer underneath that made me see and reminded me that I am not, and yet I am, the person I was 20 years ago. And I am, but I am not really the person I will be years from now. And so it has made me kind of shift a little bit and pay attention to the person I'm becoming. It made me ask what it means to be human. It's a terrific read. If you haven't read it already and brought your copy to get signed, it's an assignment. You have to read it. So here, with no more hesitation, is Steve Ellerhoff. Can't wait to hear this.
Thank you for that. And thank you all for coming. It's kind of amazing to just sort of connect the dots of faces here from up here and see all these people I know. And some of you I haven't seen in a long time. So thank you for being here. I suppose with the book, how I should introduce it, I thought what I'd do is just set it up a little bit and then read a bit of it. So that'll be nap time. You know, and then if anybody has any questions, you know, go ahead and ask them. And then after that, if you've got a copy you want me to sign, I'll sign it. And then we have copies here. And a big thank you to Alice Meyer and Beaverdale Books for hosting this. So the book is about time travel, and it's about the American father of time travel. In the book, there's sort of a race that goes on between 2 scientists. One of them is American. He's from Des Moines, and because, I mean, why shouldn't the inventor of time travel come from Des Moines? You know, he very well could. And the other is a man from Japan. In the future, he has sort of worn out his welcome in his personal life. He's very, very successful and known. And he's on television every week on the Wanda Hubler show talking about the ramifications of time travel. But nobody in his personal life really likes him. And he has unfortunately done that thing where you go to the future and watch the biopic about yourself, and you see that it won an Academy Award, and it painted you in a very bad light. So he gets it in his head that he'll go back and he'll show that actor who plays him before he plays him what he's really like. Maybe influence the performance a bit. And he also goes back and picks up his 12-year-old self, because his 12-year-old self is the only person he can think of anymore who he might be able to impress with what he's done, which is really quite sad. His time machine is shaped like a pyramid. It's about the size of a porta potty on the outside. There's a bit of TARDIS stuff going on there. And it has a glowing capstone. It's called the Providence. And he takes this actor and his 12-year-old self on a trip around time, showing them different events in history. For instance, he's made a lot of money on using his technology for tourism. So he has turned the crucifixion sort of into a big tourist destination. It's the place most people will pay the most money for to go see. And it now resembles something like Woodstock. There's just thousands of people on the hills around Golgotha looking on. But he can go to other locations as well. And as he goes through and takes them here, there, and everywhere, he just disappoints them at each stop. Every place that they go to is sullied somehow by his having gone there. And there's always some kind of danger involved that he doesn't anticipate. He also, I should say, in introducing this bit that I'm going to read, wishes that he was a profound thinker in terms of relating to other people. He's been able to unlock whatever it is that lets you travel through time, but people still think he's a jerk. So he writes a series of platitudes. He calls them platitudes, and he's trademarked all of them. And each chapter begins with one of these nonsensical platitudes. So, I'm going to read to you when the time traveler, Dick, the actor, Virgil, and 12-year-old Richie arrive in the Ice Age. And this is chapter 19, and it opens with the following platitude. Time is a twister. It'll take you out of Kansas and drop you where nobody has heard of Chubby Checker. A Dick Rex platitude. Standing in front of the door, Dick raised his hand to open it, but stopped short before pressing the panel. Richie and Virgil stood behind him, one to each side, both nervous about where and when he had brought them. Their negligent host had delivered turns both boring and grotesque thus far. Whatever time lay beyond the door was hopefully fun and or safe. The only fact they could assume with confidence was that it had to be long, long ago, for the trip took more than twice as long as their 2,000-year jaunt back to the crucifixion. "All right, gentlemen," he said by way of introduction to the next stop. "Even if I'm not certain about what we might find here, for that reason we'll just step outside, make a quick survey before coming back in to grab any supplies or equipment that'll be necessary." "Where are we already?" Richie begged. "I want to know. "Richie, Virgil," he said as he pressed the panel, "I give you the last great ice age." The door rolled up, letting in cool summer air to reveal a kind of animal Richie had never seen before. Yellow, like a lion, and maneless with a tufted tail, it was a cat of some type, enormous, sunning itself on a large flat rock not 5 feet from the door. Taking notice, the beast lazily considered them, revealing in a yawn canines like claw hammers. "Da!" Dick slapped the panel again, the door whirring shut. "That must have been the year of the cat." He shoved through them and leaned over the console, manually jogging the Providence ahead a few years. The craft jarred and threw them in different directions before they could find something to grab onto, the fridge handle in Richie's case. Dick made a note in his computer log, pinpointed the location on the world map screen, and returned to the door. The passengers took their positions on either side again, exchanging worried looks behind his back. "Right, now, again, hopefully, without prehistoric cave lion waiting for us this time, I give you the Ice Age." The door rolled open, revealing the cat's rock. No cat in sight. Dick, emboldened by the beast's absence, leaned out and rubbernecked the landscape before taking a cautious stride into it. He turned to face them, checked either side of the Providence, and waved them out. Richie made Virgil go first and followed at his heels, having decided that the actor was the one with his best interests in mind. He just felt safer in his stead than he did in his own. The air wasn't freezing, not what he expected of an ice age. It seemed to be summer or something like it. The grass green, the birch trees leafy, and conifers bearing maturing cones. In the distance before them was what seemed a hill of dirty snow and ice, rising steadily with exposed boulders and trees growing upon it. Richie had seen the same scuzzy ice on curbs in late February, packed solid and so encrusted with sand and filth that it was hard to believe it had once been the undefiled sinews of snowmen. Seeing it on the side of the street was one thing. An entire hill of it that started there and stretched for miles was another. A glacier! My mother's told me about those before, Virgil shared. There were supposedly still a few around when I was a boy. Your mother never saw one like this, Dick said, hands on his hips. Follow this one far enough north and it's a mile thick. That's a lot of ice. So, where are we in the world? Southwest France, 49,998 years before Christ. He lifted his hand to his brow and stepped to the edge of the cat's long, flat rock. It overlooked some evergreens and a grassy plain. Richie, over here. He joined himself on the predator's vantage point. There below them on a plain was a circus parade of woolly mammoths, their ivory tusks swerving out like misplaced ribs. They put yaks to shame with their shaggy brown hair, standing like massive tea cozies, and twirling the long grasses with their hirsute trunks like Virgil did with his hair. There were other animals on the prairie, horned wisent and aurochs, but the mammoths commanded the most attention despite grazing so calmly. I can't give you living dinosaurs yet, Dick offered. So how about some giant prehistoric mammals? He said. What's that supposed to mean? Come on. This isn't this neato? Richie knelt and grabbed a small stone, nearly losing his balance as he stood again. With a sad throw, he tossed it hard as he could at the megafauna. It fell far short of hitting anything breathing. Come on, don't throw crap like that, Dick scolded. He put an arm around the boy and pointed across the plain. Those woolly mammoths right there, magnificent animals. Fed our ancestors, you know. King-size steaks for those brave people who lived before us. Can you imagine it? Forget beef. I've actually got it in mind to find a way to bring some back. Introduce mammoth meat to dinner tables around the world. At the moment, Richie's impulse for being a brat was far greater than that for eating, having been made to exercise against his will for almost a whole half hour. Sounds lame. What's gotten up your butt? Dick asked, squaring off. Hey, Dick, Virgil called from the Providence. Dick, come here. Really, kiddo, I wasn't planning on going back this far with you guys. You might show some respect. Dick, hold on to your tights, actor boy. The tendons on Dick's neck went taut. I'm giving my ungrateful self a lecture over here covering standard etiquette when receiving a gift unlike any kid's ever received before. Richie, signaling his disregard for the lecture by pulling down the short bill on his hat, looked back at Virgil and then at what Virgil was looking at. Next to a bright bunch of blue bachelor's buttons and what looked like a snapped broomstick jutting upwards, sticking out from under the time machine at comfortable angles, were two legs. Two human legs, with moccasins on the feet, casually set as if their owner preferred to sleep beneath black pyramids with his feet out. Is that a dead person? Richie called over. Dead? Dick followed the boy's line of sight and seeing what he saw, cringed. They walked and stood over the legs jutting out from under the Providence. They were covered profusely by thick hair, ginger and curly, and the footwear was made of animal hide, worn smooth on the soles and laced together with leather strips. There was no movement, no lifelike wiggles. The cornflower blossoms lolling in the breeze beside them paid no heed, showed no recognition of trauma, but the stick jaunting up told otherwise. Richie and Virgil's chaperone pouted and shook his head. I don't suppose that's the Wicked Witch of the West. East, Richie corrected. Dorothy lands on the Wicked Witch of the East. Whatever. There's no way you can tell me those are ruby slippers, though. You've got to move the machine, Virgil urged, cutting through their petty arguing. "We have to get him out from under there." "I think he's dead," Richie observed, crossing his arms. "He's got to be dead," Dick concurred, crossing his arms. "Or she's dead. Serves her right for not shaving her legs in about 10 years. Ha ha! "Aren't you upset about this?" Virgil raked at his springy hair, edging on distress. "You landed on somebody." "Impossible. The computer compensates for all foreign bodies and voids them before popping into a time." "But didn't you switch it to manual?" He glanced away. "So you accidentally landed on this man. By the looks of the fur on those legs, that wasn't so much a man as it was a Neanderthal. They look human to me." Close. They all die out anyway." "This man was alive. Maybe he was already dead. Already dead, like he just happened to die here and we landed on his body." "Sure," Dick rationalized. "Who knows how long he's been lying there." "Are you kidding?" He knelt, pulled the leather moccasins off, and cupped the calloused, curled toes with his hands. "These feet are fresh. They're still warm." Virgil's protestations appealed to the boy's sense of dignity. He'd never seen a dead body before. Only in movies and television shows and video games had he encountered dead people, or avatars of them, made up or pixelated. This was the real thing. Someone had been squashed when they arrived, his spear snapped by the force, and Dick was totally unfazed by it. Finding his own arms crossed the same as Dick's, he dropped them to his sides. Something in Virgil's circumspect prudence drew him to the actor's side, plopping to his knees in the chill grass by the lifeless legs. Richie tore one tuft of grass from the ground, and then another. "You killed him." "Murder's a pretty serious charge," he said, voice going sharp. "I've never killed anybody. I never will. Sure, maybe I've said I wanted to before, but I'm not capable of that, okay?" That brought Richie's eyes to slits and blood to his cheeks. "I hope I never say that. I hope I never want that. I hope I never think it." Dick dismissed him with a sneer, pacing away in bilious retreat. Virgil, wordless, looked at Richie, his great gray eyes conveying approval. Bashful, the blushing boy twisted his lips into an asterisk and turned his attention to the green blades in his grasp. He freed them, sprinkling them on the ground, and covered his nose with his forearm. On realizing something, the feet stank. And then Dick yipped, and he looked over his shoulder, along with Virgil looking over his own, and saw the sort of sight he was not prepared for at all. Their guide, their time pilot, him himself, lay incapacitated in a crumpled heap on the cave lion's long rock. Above him stood two broad, hairy, big-nosed men with sweaty red manes and clothes fashioned from leather and animal furs. They were not very tall, but they bore their teeth through their beards and wore leather booties just like those the dead man wore. Worse, the one on the left held a spear, and the other a fat cudgel, swinging it freely. Seeing the effect of their quick bastonado on Dick, and wondering what they might do to Virgil and him, Richie, for the very first time in his life, appealed to a higher power and prayed for deliverance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It isn't an accident that Steve ended up working in a toy store for a long time. He's very playful, so just to keep him focused on his dissertation, I brought along a little Kurt Vonnegut doll.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely an influence, and yeah, I am doing a PhD right now, in part on Mr. Vonnegut's short stories, and Ray Bradbury's short stories as well. So, thank you for this. It's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions or any concerns about what we just went through together?